today pretty much what we're going to do is break down the place and fill tab for you and then show you some of the other rhinestone features that will help you while you're designing as well. So at any point, if you guys have any questions, just let us know or let me know, and as I see those coming in, if you need anything repeated, anything like that, just shoot me a question and I can go ahead and cover that again. Can't hear anything. Is everyone having trouble with the audio? Hey Jesse. Okay, I can hear you. All right, let me message this one person real quick. All right, so again, my name is Sean, and this is just going to be working with rhinestones. Awesome. All right, so we're going to start with the place and fill tab. So this is where most of our rhinestone features are going to take place. Now we do have a couple in the edit tab. We have the fill between. That's mostly the one in our edit tab, and then a lot of the buttons down here as well are going to help us with our rhinestone design. So those are always going to be at the bottom of any tab. But the place and fill is where we're going to add most of our rhinestone, or do most of our rhinestone work. So we'll kind of break it down real quick. So up top here, you guys actually have a lot of presets already for you. So the faded 10 heart island, first outline, second outline text, 3-row stone offset, basic stone hatch fill. So if you click on any of those, you'll see how it fills out all the information for you. So these are just, some defaults. The default one is going to be pretty much blank for you. Hey Jim, no problem. We're just getting started. So the default's going to be just pretty much you're going to fill in all the information for you. But if you're doing anything with scatters, we have the faded 10 heart. So those are just some presets that's going to fill in all of your information for you. So next we have the inside and outside and add stones button. So first of all, the inside and outside is just where we're going to apply the fill to. So let's just say we had a basic circle. If I want to fill stones to the outside of the circle, I just select outside, add stones. And if I want to select it to the inside, same thing, inside, add stones. So you can actually use this place and fill area as a way to create a boundary around your design or an island around your design without rhinestones too. So let's say, go to one of my clip arts real quick. All right, so if I had a guy like this and I just wanted to outline around him, I can still use the settings here. So let's do one to the outside. I'm going to click island fill, and you'll see how it adds this island, or this, it's going to be a full object behind it. So pretty much what we mean by islands here is one row of stones. This one's going to be one island vector. So it's not going to add, because we didn't check add stones, it's not going to apply the stones around our design. Once you do that, you can change the color, and again, it just kind of gives you that 2-color look. So that's pretty much the same thing that the magic boundary is going to do down here for you. So before we had the boundary tool, this is kind of how we would apply that boundary to our design. We would just use the place and fill, but we wouldn't add the stone. So you can still do that in this area. With the magic boundary being set up now, I typically just stick with the rhinestones in here, and then I'll use the magic boundary if I need that look around my guy. So you can see it there, just like that. So same thing, full object behind it. So when we're working with stones, if we're ever doing an inside fill and you want the entire object filled, you're going to place your islands at 0. So by telling it to by telling it 0 islands, add stones. We can set everything else to auto. I can do island fill, and you'll see how it fills in that pattern perfectly. Now once we get to the bottom here, you can see that all my stones right now are connected by a path. So that blue line that we see here, that's the path. So if I select this group right here, they're all connected by a path. Right now the smallest circle here, they're all overlapping. So when we're working with stones, we can't ever have overlapping stones unless it's a different color, and I'll go into that a little bit later. They can slightly overlap, but in this case we have the same color stones. So what we need to do is select that group, so you can see how all of them are selected, and I'm going to come here, and then we have our up and down arrow. I'm going to say down 1, so I'm just left clicking this once. It's going to remove one of the stones from that path and make the spacing equal between the rest of them. So if I move out to the next line here and I take a stone out, you can see the spacing remains the same from each one. It's just allowing me to add or subtract stones out of that pattern. All right. So when we're going to the outside of an object, we can't leave it at 0. So we have to put in an actual number there. So again, islands you can think of as like a row of stones. So if we want 2 rows, I need to click 2, switch this to the outside, island fill, and you'll see how it gives me 2 rows around the outside. So if we want to do the same thing to the inside, we could. It will still give us the 2 rows, but again, if we want it completely filled like our object here, we just leave that at 0 and it knows to fill it perfectly. Now if I have this to the outside and I have this at 0 islands, you'll see down here it's going to give me my error. So it's going to say please enter number of steps, and then it says islands. So that lets me know that I have to come up here and say, oh, okay, I forgot to add 1 island, hit that, and now it's going to give me my island right around my object. So the next big area, or the next big feature we need to look at is our contour. So what our contour is doing is when we have a solid object like this, the distance it comes off that object is our contour spacing. So your space in your fill line, you can pretty much leave your space at 0.02, and your fill line will be set to auto, and that's going to pull from the settings from whatever stone size you're using. So you shouldn't really have to play around with those too much. It's more the contour spacing that we'll mess with, and that's pretty much when we're doing like an inside fill too. So we'll go over this a little bit again when we're designing. But for now, you can see that it's set to auto, so you just click the A. So it knows to go off this distance so the stones and the vinyl don't overlap. So by setting that to auto, it's going to pretty much do all the work for you, and you don't have to sit there and guess, okay, it's 0.04, island fill. Now you can see that my stones overlap my actual circle a little bit. So we don't want this when we're designing. So instead of you having to guess that number, which is around 0.08, you just select auto, and it's going to automatically know you want it off your design just a little bit like that. Now when we're filling an object, we don't necessarily need to have this at auto. When we're going to the outside of an object, it helps us out a lot more. But when we're going to the inside, we can actually change that. We can set it to 0. So we'll adjust that a little bit. All right, so the next is our corner detect. So when we're working with an object that might have a lot of corners or just little tiny areas, usually we'll want to set that corner detect. We'll just check it just like that. And what that does for us, I'm going to go ahead and do 2 samples. So our first one, and let's do this. We can do it to the outside, it will still show up. So you can see around my corners now that they're not lined up very well. So out of the 4 corners, we have one that's actually correct, that we don't have to go, that we wouldn't have to go back and edit. So same set, same box, same size. I'm hitting corner detect this time, and now you can see how perfect all those corners are. Now the reason it does this is because on this left side, when we don't have the corner detect checked, if I pull away my stones, they're all on one continuous line. When we select the corner detect, what it does is it starts at 1, and then once it hits a corner, it stops that line. And then it starts and stops until the next corner, and then it repeats over and over until it finishes the design. So in this piece, there's actually going to be 4 separate pieces because they're stopping and starting at each one of those corners. So this one is one solid piece, or one path, because we didn't have the corner detect checked. This one here we did, so it's going to break into 4 separate pieces. Now if I had a star or a polygon shape and I did the same thing, every corner would be a separate piece. Bigger. So on this one, it's not recognizing the angle. So what we can do is make this a little bit more. Let's see if that will fix this too. There we go. So I just raised this corner detect to 120. And now you can see it breaks it up into a few different pieces. So that's what the corner detect is going to do for us. The biggest issue when we use the corner detect is once we clear our paths, so those blue lines, this is our path. Once we do that, if I come down to one of these corners, you'll notice that there's going to be a stone overlapping. So every time we have that corner detect, every corner that meets like this is going to have an overlapping stone. So before we, finish our design, we have to use some of our tools down here to make sure we don't have any overlapping stones. Now in this case, and if it's a simple object like this, you'll start to realize, okay, I know that corner is going to have an overlap, so I can just come in and delete, just left click and delete all those extra stones, and then we're good to go. And it's only going to be on the corners, so none of these other stones you'll have to worry about. Now if I use my tools to see this, so down here we have a couple different tools that are going to help us edit our rhinestone designs. So the ones that are going to help us see any overlapping stones are going to be these 2 right here. So this is going to be our mark top and mark bottom overlapping stones button. I tend, especially if I'm using the corner detect, I'll always use the mark top, because if I use the mark bottom, it has them selected, so I can technically just move those up and delete. But I visually I don't notice that any are overlapping unless I really zoom in. It kind of gives you like a red outline slightly. But again, it doesn't really show us much. So if we do the same thing and mark the top, now it's going to show you that all those corners are marked red, and that lets us know that these are just all overlapping stones. And what's cool about it too is when we actually select that button, this mark over top, or any of these 2, it selects all the red stones at the same time, so I can simply pull those out and hit delete all at once. Now when we get to some more complicated designs, I don't tend to delete them all at once. We'll go through the design and see if there's any quick fixes, but if you're doing something like this, you can definitely remove all of them once selected. So the last tool that's going to help us clean up any stones is if we have stones overlapping and we want them to be merged together. So we have that button right here, merge overlapping stones. So what that's going to do is take two stones that are overlapping. Instead of marking one red, we can simply click the merge overlap. It brings them together as one, but the main problem with that is if you have a couple overlapping stones and you hit the merge overlap, now it tends to leave a lot of gaps throughout your design. So as we're doing a couple of these designs, I'll show you when I tend to use either the mark or merge to help me save time and edit. But you'll use them at different parts, and you can use the same, depending on the design, you might use the mark top and the overlap feature on on one rhinestone design. All right. So any questions so far? All good? Perfect. All right, so next we have our 4 buttons down here. So we have our path, hatch, island, and offset. The one you're going to be using the most, or the two you'll use the most, are most likely the path and then the island fill. The island fill is probably going to be used the most, followed by the path, then maybe the hatch, and then the offset. So we'll cover each one of these. So we're just going to write out word dance. Let's go ahead and use our stadium font so it's a nice script font. Now, when we're working with rhinestones, one thing we have to keep in mind is the dimensions or size of our design. So if I'm starting with a smaller design, pretty much a good rule is the smaller the design is, the less detail you'll have throughout your design. So here we have both the same word dance, the same text. One, I'll do the path fill at a little bit over 8 inches wide. And one thing is too, because it's a script font, we'll need to weld it. So I'm just going to select path fill. So you'll see that one up top, looks pretty good. We'll have to go through and, maybe edit a few things here and there, but otherwise looks pretty good. Now if I do it down here, this one is just over 5 inches. You can see the detail in here. We lost a lot of detail, and it's going to be a lot more editing. We have a lot more overlapping stones throughout our design. Excuse me. So keep that in mind when we're designing. If I wanted this dance in this size, it might be just easier to use a smaller stone size. Now, it's going to be easier to stone out, but when we're actually completing the design, it might be a little bit more work to brush in and everything like that. But you can see when I switch that to 6s, this definitely looks a lot nicer, more comparable to our larger dance up top here. Now the hatch fill is used a lot. It's a lot nicer when it's a block style font, so like your college fonts or our sports block. I'm just going to space these letters out just a little bit. So here we have our dance font. This one we have in more of our sports block, so it's a lot, more edges, corners, not too many like curves, like how we have the N, how it's a nice curved around the C. Here, it's very blocky. So that's where we're going to want to use the hatch fill for more of a text or design like this. So I'll use the example up top here. Let's go ahead and change that color so we can see it a little bit more. So place and fill, hatch. Go ahead and remove that. And then same thing here, hatch, remove that. So a font like this in the hatch fill is going to look a lot better. Now, it's sometimes, depending on the design, it might not catch. If it thinks it runs out of room, it won't give you everything. So in that case, I would just manually move one of these rows down here. Same with my A. Kind of give me a little problem there, so I'm just manually moving those ones down. But up top here, you can see that there's going to be a lot of pieces missing, especially once you get to those top curved edges. It's not going to look good at all with the hatch fill. So on a design like this, if I wanted it filled, I'd want to use my island fill. So with that though, if I want it to the inside, I need to switch this to the inside. We make this at 0 because we want it filled in completely. And then I can select island fill. And that's gonna, when I move this, now I haven't edited this yet, so there might be a couple areas we need to edit, but you can already see, compared to the hatch fill, how better the island fill carries around all those edges. And then lastly, we have our offset. And what that does for us is, depending on our design, let's say I had a line like this. Actually, let's go a little more. Okay. So I can tell it, let's say 3 islands to the inside. Now, even though we just have a line here, the inside and outside will still play a part to our offset fill. So when I select offset here, what that does is follows our line really nicely. So if I didn't have the offset and I had the same settings and said island, outside, you'll see how it wants to go around our entire design. Gets really nasty kind of towards the end here. But it's going to go around both sides of our design. So the offset's just going to either go to the left or right of our line, depending on how we set it up. So same line, this time I'm doing to the outside, offset. So that's going to put it to the right side of my line. So that inside kind of goes to the left of my object. The right, or the outside, will go to the right. Now again, you won't probably use the offset too much when you're designing. It's more going to be either the island or path fill that we're going to be working with. All right, so next what we can combine with these different fills is our magic path. So what the magic path does for us is it's only going to work for like single lines, so it won't work with a full fill. So we're going to do 1 island to the outside, and I'm going to select my magic path, and I'm going to hit island fill. So that creates that island around me. Now let's say I need this resized a little bit. I can actually select this, and we were a little bit around 8, a little less than 8.5. I'm going to move it all the way to 10. And what the magic path does for me is it keeps my stones in SS10s, and it still adds more stones in there, so I don't have to restart from the beginning. So these are all still SS10s. Now, if I take the same design and make it really small like we did at the beginning, it's going to lose a lot of that detail and not look very good. Yeah, it's similar to the rhinestone silhouette feature. Now, that I'm not sure with that one if it will actually let you do a fill. This one is, again, more for like if I did a path fill or an island fill to the outside, not a full inside fill. So that's a really cool feature, though. It's, it allows you to resize your design maybe just a little bit without having to, hit undo, 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 adjust this a little bit, resize it. It's just going to take all my settings, keep them, and then just readjust. So I can just pull it out a little bit at a time until I like it, so I don't kind of minimizing my work. So once I'm ready to edit a design like this, what I want to do first is highlight my entire design. I'm going to hit clear pass. And now you'll see how all of those pass. And let me go back real quick so we can see those. Those blue lines here are that's all pass. So we want to delete those so we can kind of individually edit our rhinestones. So we clear our pass. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to highlight my design and I'm going to mark all my overlapping stones red, marking the top ones red. So what that does for me, now this is the point where you can see how it marks them all red and has all my red ones selected. So I could technically just drag that down and then hit delete, and then I don't have any more overlapping stones. Now the problem with that is if I zoom in, now I have a gap here. So I have to know kind of where all those errors were so I can go back and maybe fix some of those gaps. So what I like to do instead is before I actually delete those red stones, I go through my design a little bit and I try to say, okay, if I don't have to delete those stones, I don't want to. This one looks like it's gonna definitely have to be removed. If you see a red stone and not a purple one touching it or whatever color you're using, it probably means it's a straight overlap. So we definitely want to delete those ones out. And I can actually drop one here too. So again, this one right here, usually you'll see something like that and be like, okay, this is overlapping, so I'll just nudge this one. But if we see it just like this, we just delete, and now that's fixed. So again, this part here, straight overlap, I can hit delete. These two here are slightly overlapping each other. So I can maybe move this one, nudge this one, and I might be even able to put two stones throughout there too. So now those ones are good. This one's a straight overlap, straight overlap. Now this section here, we kind of have to decide, okay, do I want this line to be more predominant, this one, or go to the middle? And this is where I said you can kind of combine, your marking top and the merge overlapping stones, because at this point I could almost just select that area there, merge those stones, and that's a lot less editing that I have to worry about. It kind of just takes the middle point of both of them, and then maybe I can nudge or respace if needed. So again, we'll just kind of continue through our design. These ones are all just straight overlaps because I don't see any stones touching them. So I'm just going to delete those out. Again, this one here, I bet I can just nudge these over a little bit. And those ones aren't. This one, a little bit too close to do that. And this one's a straight overlap. So I'm just kind of cleaning this up as we go. So straight overlap, straight overlap. This one just needs a little bit of a nudge. That one's straight overlap, and then we have a few down here. So just a nudge there, delete that one. And then these ones here, I can just kind of move just like that. Now I do still have a couple red stones in there. So at this point, I'll just highlight those areas and make them all the same color. And then if I want to check again, I can mark everything red and nothing shows up red this time. So now my design's set and is a lot nicer this way. So I could remove that, and that's pretty much my stone outline with my vinyl in the middle. So the next part with when you're designing different objects, we can use a tool called the respace. So that's going to be right down here at the bottom of your wizard, right next to the clear paths. Now, if my entire design is spaced like it is here, I'm really not going to worry about going through and making, everything looks pretty good. But let's say I did one of those merge overlaps. Yeah, we could have, someone was asking if it would look better to move the D over. We could have moved that over a bit at the beginning when we did the respacing, and that could help with an issue like that there. But let's say I merged a couple stones on accident and it left me with a couple gaps in this line now. So instead of me trying to, okay, let me copy a stone, put it there. Now I got to move this one over a bit, this one over a bit, and using the arrow keys, just nudging. Instead of having to go through all that, we have our respacing tool for that. So on a line like this, I'm going to hold shift and I'm just going to left click this entire line of stones from this point to this point here. Now when we're doing this, we got to make sure we're not like jumping around. So I'm not going from one side back here over to this side. We want it to go in just one direction. And we don't want to go too much like this point where pretty much where the corners would naturally break if you did the corner detect. That's how I look at my respacing. So I'm just going to go this point to this point here. And then I'm going to come down here and hit respace. So that's going to put a line, a path through all of those stones I just selected. And once it's on this path, now once I click the respace, I haven't clicked anything else after. So while this line is selected with all your stones, I can hit the up arrow and it will add stones to that path. Now obviously I can go too much, something like that, and then I can just hit the down arrow and then that fixes it just like that. So the respace tool is going to be one of your best friends when you're working with the rhinestones. So at any point, let's say this area right here is a little bit too condensed. I can just select those, respace it, and those look a lot nicer now that they're not all right on top of each other. So as we go through, we're going to do another design here too, doing an inside fill. So we'll go over this respacing tool a couple times. But again, most of the designs, especially like a full-size rhinestone, you're always going to be using the respace tool. So any questions so far? Should there be stones in the A? Yeah. I'm not sure. It might have started when it was too small to fill that. But if I wanted that area filled now, probably the easiest way would just be doing a smart fill. Inside one island fill. And then just clear my paths. Remove that fill. And then again here, they're a little bit touching, but I can just select a few stones, respace, and now that issue's fixed. Now what's cool with rhinestones too, at this point, well, with the C, it depends on, so if I wanted to add stones like this into the C just to have it completely filled, if your stones are overlapping a little bit like that, that's okay. So if you wanted it filled in like that, you totally could do that and you wouldn't have to worry about it. A small overlap is fine. Now we don't want our stones and vinyl overlapping like this, but something small like this where it's just like the edges, that's okay. Yeah, if you want to, yeah, on this design it's like a combination, but you don't necessarily have to. I mean, you take that vinyl out. So they're asking if we were keeping the vinyl. So right now it's vinyl and stones, but if I wanted to remove that vinyl, now I have just a stone design. So it's up to you on exactly what you're looking. But you could always do like a glitter stone combination and then make that design really nice. Now the thing with rhinestones is, most of the time it's gonna on your end of it, it's gonna take a lot less time to do an outline design like we did than come through and do an entire rhinestone design like this one here. So, and the nice thing about this too is brushing wise, it's going to take a lot less. You're not using as many stones, so it's just a little bit, the shirt isn't going to be as heavy and everything like that. So we typically, when we're designing, we'll typically do more of an outline than like a full rhinestone design now. But again, it's up to your customer and stuff like that. But if you're having trouble filling in an object, you can always give them the option of, hey, let's just outline this with stones, and then we can do a glitter finish. And that will save you a lot of time. You don't have to brush as many stones, which again saves you time, especially once you get into like maybe a 2 or 3 color design. So Sean, you press the vinyl first, then the rhinestones. Yeah, always the vinyl first. When we're working with any multi-deck of stones and vinyl, we always want to do the vinyl first. The main reason for that is the stones are a little bit thicker or like taller than the vinyl would lay. So if you press the stones first and then come back with the vinyl, there's a good chance that it's not going to get a full contact on the vinyl. Now, trust me, we've done it backwards. It happens sometimes where it's like, oh, I've already added the stones, but now I need to add vinyl. Most likely you'll probably get enough heat on it to make it at least hold at the moment, but it could lead to, falling off or peeling quicker or just not a good press in the long run. So if possible, always do the vinyl first and then followed by your rhinestones. So for pressing wise, the rhinestones will always need to get a full press. So let's say our design was like this and we had the split feature. So we did half of our design blue, half pink, and then the stones on top. So this is a 3 color press now, or three presses for this design. The rhinestone's going to be 1 press, our pink's going to be another, and then our blue vinyl is going to be third. So with this design, I would, probably select the blue first just because that's probably what I would do. There's no, really with the pink or the blue, you can do it either way, so it's okay. But the first press, your blue, would get about a 5-second tack. We call it like a tack. So you don't want to go the full, 10 to 15 seconds. You're just going to do really a 3 to 5 second press on your first color. Now, since the pink would be our second vinyl color, now we would do a full 10 seconds here, and then another full 10 to 15 for our rhinestones. So the first color, the last vinyl color always gets a full press, and our stones will always get a full press. Any vinyl before that will just be a tack, so a 3 to 5 second press. Because if you did 10, 10, and 10, now this first color is getting 30 seconds worth of pressing. It could shrink the vinyl and stuff like that. So always tack the first few colors of your vinyl. The last will get a full press, and then if you're adding stones on top of that, that's going to get a full press as well. You don't necessarily have to let it cool down or anything in between. Now, if the vinyl, actually, no, you shouldn't. Yeah, you shouldn't really have to worry about letting it cool down in between. So now let's go ahead and let's grab one of our basic shapes. We'll do a heart fill. So we're going to do this around, this is about a 4-inch heart. Now we're going to do an inside fill. We got our stone set to SS10 up top here. We don't need the magic path because we're doing it inside. Now again, because it's an inside, we want this completely filled. We're going to do 0 islands. And my auto, I'm going to set this to auto now, and my fill line to auto. And then let's go ahead and make these some red stones. And I'm just going to select island fill. So now you'll see how that fills our heart shape. Now there's going to be a couple of areas like this that are completely open. Now it's just, what this means is it couldn't fit another, this like row right here couldn't go all the way down here because it sees another stone there and doesn't think it has enough room. Now manually I could probably add 1 or 2 stones in here, but it's going off the boundaries of the other stones and won't let it do that. So manually I can come back and add maybe 1 or 2 in there. Now we still want our corner to detect checked because we have the corner down here and up top here. No, so someone just asked about the corner detect too. I moved it to 120 earlier. So I think usually it's around 100. So you can most likely leave it around 100. It was just this original shape I did with the polygon. The angles were a little bit different. So to get it to work correctly, I just moved that to 120. So you can adjust this corner detect if it's not giving you a good corner. So on this one here, when we had it set to 100, and I did a corner detect outside one, add stones, island fill. That one worked really nicely. Do island. Oh, contour spacing, that's why. So did anyone see what I just did there? So I had this contour set to 0. Actually, I think it was just empty completely. And I did, oh, so it needs to be set to 0. So I did an island fill with 1 island to the outside, and it gave me 2 rows of stones. So it's technically not an error because it's not going to give you an error message, but it's not what we wanted either. So if for some reason it does that, it's just because you have to have, when we're going to the outside, if you have it set to 0, that's what it's going to do for us. So if I set this to 0.02 island fill, it's only going to give me that 1 island. And you can see how my corner around it isn't looking very nice. So that's why I just bumped this up to 120. And now those corners are recognized a little bit nicer. So if you're running into any issues like that where it's not recognizing your corners, just up the angle a little bit, hit apply. If it looks better, good. If not, just keep going until it does. All right. So with our heart here, sometimes, let me grab that real quick. When we have gaps like this in our designs, what we can try to do is mess around with the contour spacing to maybe get a little bit better results. So I think we had it set to auto the first time I did this. Let me just kind of look and see if that looks similar. So maybe it wasn't set to auto. So you can see when it's set to auto now, how those gaps have already closed in our design. So we have a couple spaces down here, but the spacing up here has closed a lot more. So by just kind of switching up the contour spacing a little bit, it's going to give you different results. So let's go in the middle. Let's do 0.04 island fill. And again, now the bottom here is pretty closed. We definitely have some overlapping stones, but then we have this opened up here too. So I personally would either start with the first one we did or the second one. This one here has a lot more overlapping stones and just something, these two are going to be easier to kind of fix. So let's go ahead. We'll just start with our first one. So once we create our design, the next step is clearing our paths. So now all these stones we can move around individually. And let's go ahead and select these stones, and we're just going to turn them blue. And the reason we're doing that is just because when we mark these red, or when we mark them, the overlapping stones, they're going to be marked red. So if you're using red stones, it's going to be a little bit of a different shade, but it's just going to be hard to see. So just in the meantime, just switch your design to a different color stone. And then when you're using any of the marked top or bottom stones, we can go ahead and then, and actually too, let's go ahead and get rid of our heart there. Because if I have that heart in the background and I select everything and I mark it red, didn't mark it that time, so that's nice. So now it's going to mark all of our overlapping stones red. So I can just simply move all those out, or I can go through. In this case, I can already tell a lot of these are just straight overlaps. So I'm just going to simply just move them all out, delete, and then we'll go to work on fixing up the rest of our design. So this is where I can possibly, if possible, I'm just going to try to quick fix as much as I can by just making a copy and dropping a stone. Now once I get to a part like this, it gets a little tight. I can maybe nudge a stone or two, but then we could start leaving kind of bigger gaps behind. So I don't like getting into the habit of dropping a stone and then moving 2 or 3 to fix an issue. That case, it worked pretty good. But here on our design on this one, this line is pretty much my middle point. So this stone here, I don't really want to move that because that's that line coming straight down. So what I can do now is just select this row. I'm just holding shift, respace, and then that just brings it up to that line. And actually, let's go all the way down to our stone here. Respace. I can try to add 1 stone in there. It still looks pretty good, so we can leave it like that. Delete that line. This one I'm just going to nudge up here so it's more of my, stays kind of more in that straight line coming down. And then again, hold shift, select those stones, respace, up 1, looks good. Then I can just delete that line out. So this is where the respace is really going to help you. And instead of, this is the part where you'll see a lot of people using the arrow keys to slowly nudge, 3 times on each stone, where that, if you keep doing that throughout this entire design, it's going to take forever. So that's where the respace is going to save you a lot of time. Just like that. Yeah, so the respace, to select all the stones, I'm holding shift. So I'm holding shift, left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, left click. And then I'm not holding the shift key when I'm hitting the respace or anything. At this point I'm just left clicking the respace. And then if I need to add a stone in there, I can. So again, left click, hold shift, left click, left click, left click, left click, respace, up 1, just like that. And we'll bring these ones down a bit here. And then again, just manually add 1 or 2 in there. So as you kind of use the respace, it will leave these little paths behind. So once you're done, instead of deleting them all at once or as you go, you can wait till the end, highlight that section, hold shift and hit clear paths. It'll get rid of all those extra paths for you too. And then if I wanted, so right now I have the inside, we can go ahead and make that all red. Now I still have my original line here. So now I can go at or place and fill 1 to the outside. auto, auto, island fill, and now that gives me a 2-color heart. Now when I remove that line, see how we have a kind of a gap between our 2 colors here? So if I want those a little bit closer, I can reduce my contour spacing. So again, when it's set to auto, it's around 0.08, 0.07. So if I go down to maybe 0.04 island fill, now look how close. It's going to overlap my original heart, but that's going to be removed anyways. So now I can clear my path, remove that. Now a couple of these places are overlapping, so we'd probably want to go a little bit more. Let's do 0.05. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. We never want to have the same color stone overlapping or touching, or even this close. That's going to cause, cuts and tears in our flock when we go to cut these designs. So what we want to, if we have 2 different color stones, those are going to be on separate templates. So if I'm slightly overlapping my blue and my red, I don't care because my actual stone size are 0.118. So if I resize both of those, they're not actually touching. So our circles are going to be a little bit bigger because, we need them to be able to fall into them. So if they're overlapping slightly like this and they're either a different size or a different color, so I could have, what I mean by different sizes, if I had 2 6s, or if I had a 6 and a 10 and they're touching or this close, that's okay because again, they're on a separate template. Even though they're the same color, they're going to be on a separate template when I go and create this design. So what I mean by that is, if I have my heart here, go to my templates, separator. These are going to be separated to different templates. So I don't have to worry about anything overlapping because, they're not going to cut on the same template. When they're together, yeah, they're slightly overlapping, but the red and the blue will be on 2 different templates and won't be cut together. And when you layer the stones, they'll, if they are touching at that point still, they're gonna, apply a little force and they'll kind of naturally push each other out a little bit. All right, so any questions up to this point? So different size stones, when you're creating an object like this, you're not going to be able to do a combination of stones. You'd have to manually go back. Like I kind of have like a little gap or area right here that I've noticed. I would have to manually go here, turn that into a 6 and fill those gaps. So that's going to be a manual thing. Now keep in mind, like let's say I had a couple areas where I could throw some 6s in here, maybe something like that, just so I kind of have some of those gaps closed. Yeah, if I can increase the contour a little bit more around the blue, they wouldn't touch at all. But let's say I start adding a couple 6s in our design. A couple things about working with SS6s. If you don't have a machine that's going to hand place them for you, they are a little bit harder to work with than like the SS10s and so on. So if you come across a design that's all 6s but looks really, really nice because it has a lot of detail, and you have to cut that in flock and then brush it in, it's going to take a lot more time than that same design would in 10s. And it's going to create another template for you. So now, even though I only have 2 colors, the red has 2 different sizes in it. So it's going to create a template and use the same amount of flock that it would for these two here. Because the way our templates line up together, you have to, use all four corners, and then they line up, and then you brush in the second or third color. So if you if you start working on the design and you want, a lot of detail, a lot of colors, and you use combinations of 6s and 10s, but your design has 2 or 3 colors, now you have to multiply everything by 2. So if it's a 2-color design, but you have combinations of 6s and 10s, that's 4 different templates you're going to have to cut and layer. So that's going to increase your productivity. So that's the one thing with 6 is, they're obviously going to, any design that I would have made on this front page, if we change it to 6s, make that a little bit bigger, it's always going to look a lot cleaner. It'll give us a little bit more detail. But, once you work with 6s once or twice, you'll probably start to realize, man, 10s are so much easier and a lot less time consuming than the 6s would be. But sometimes, trust me, there's designs that we use that have 6s just because they do look a lot better. It's just, sometimes you just always want to account for your time. And, so if your client does insist on having the most detail and everything like that, just let them know, hey, because we're doing it this way, there's more time involved, there's more product involved, so it's going to be a little bit more than if we just did the same design, 2-color, all 10s. Now, the last thing with our rhinestones, so we have our new magic button, our stone outline, and the stone outline with contour. So both of those, we have a design like this, stone outline with contour. It adds the stones around my design and gives it a nice little contour. So the A didn't come out perfect, but we could, we'll go back. We'll still have to go back and edit some of these. It's not going to be perfect, but it gives us that nice look with the outline around it too. And then our next one is, let's say we had dance, and let's see if I have any dancers. Something like this. And let's go ahead and draw part. So if I have my dancer here, and again, we want to make sure the size is reasonable. So my dancer's 9 inches tall by about 4 inches wide. My heart is 8 by 8. Let's go ahead and add a little bit color to that. So what I could do now is a quick stone outline. Bring this to a new page. To get the dancer, I just went to add artwork on our live template editor, and that was part of one of our decal mega packs. And let's move this to the back. So that's what's cool about this feature too, is my dancer doesn't even have to be in front of the object at this point anymore. This stone outline button is going to do everything for you. So even if you have your clip art behind your image like it is here, now most of the time you'd probably bring it to the front just to line it up, but let's just say you have a couple different layers you're working with and it's not all, it's kind of hidden behind some things. By clicking this stone outline, it's going to do all those steps for you. So it's going to move it to the front, it's going to create a boundary around your design, and then it's going to cut out the stones and add the stones around it. So you don't have to worry about your settings. You just hit stone outline, and then it's going to knock everything out around it. Now the one thing it won't do is if there's overlapping stones, is merge those. So at this point, the last step on this one would just be highlighting, marking any stones red that are overlapping, and then just making sure we delete those out. So this tool is going to save you a lot of time. It works really well when you're like working with the magic templates and you might have like a sports ball included in the design. Now that's just going to take it right out for you. So if that stone outline button, if you didn't have it set up, you'd pretty much have to move this to the front, set your boundary to 0.17, remove shades behind, select our dancer here. Now, this one's pretty much a solid object, so normally you'd have to create a boundary, go to your place and fill, set this up, auto, and then do the island fill. So you saw how many steps that saved us now by just having to click one button. All right, so that's pretty much our basic rundown of our rhinestone features or tools. Now, did we have any additional questions? Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that pretty much wraps up everything for today. Thank you guys for attending. And again, you guys have a great Valentine's Day. If there's any additional questions, just give us a call at 941-755-1696 or shoot us an email at info@therhinestoneworld.com. And remember to always ask for Gabe. All right, guys. Well, and anyone that attended last night's webinar, I did add the designs and the recorded link, and I'll put that up on Facebook as well coming up. Jim, I didn't forget about you either, so I'll send those over to you as well. How did you get the two-colored dance? The two-colored dance was just using the split feature on the edit tab. So when you have a full color or one color design like we had originally, the split feature right here, I did a right click and that does a horizontal split and then allowed me just to change my design. And you can do that same kind of look with your dance design, right? Once it's here, it's all finished. I can just highlight this top half and change the color. And now that's a two-colored rhinestone design. So with rhinestones, it's kind of easy to get that look. You can have complete control of where, that line is too. So if I even wanted a three-color look, let's say I want to do something patriotic, so I could do red. We'll make them gray and then a blue. So that's, in a couple seconds we have a three-color rhinestone design. The recorded version will be up by tomorrow. No, alignment's not going to be difficult because our templates are going to make it really easy on you. So when you create these templates, their templates are going to line up. But the recorded for this one will be up by tomorrow. The recorded for the one last night is already up right now. If you go to your order history, you'll see the recorded link right there. All right, thank you guys so much. And again, have a great Valentine's Day.